Dispatchers help callers on the worst days of their lives. For over 25 years, we've been there. A silent partner in millions of calls thanks to our redundant and diverse networks that ensure call delivery. Today, cities are bigger, traffic more congested, and the challenge is more complex. But you're never alone, because InDigital is quietly improving, implementing, and driving the next generation of 911, so you're supported in every situation. Make the switch at indigital.net.
Have you ever met a 911 professional and asked, what's the worst call you've ever taken? Well, here's your answer. I heard your last breath the night you flipped your four-wheeler. I tried to call you the day you committed suicide by driving your car into a tree. Blue face, cold to the touch. I helped you with CPR after you found your infant face down, not breathing. It messed me up. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. You were with me from the beginning, Grandma. 27 years later, I took the 911 call when you died. How fitting to be there for me in the beginning, and I was there for you in the end. I miss you, Grandma. I am 911. This is but a glimpse into the world of emergency dispatch. But what is it really like to answer a call during someone's nightmare? What is the impact on the first responder answering the call? Available on Amazon or where you purchase your favorite books and ebooks. Imagine listening. Your worst day is our everyday.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
It was pretty awful, actually, because as a 911 dispatcher, your job is to help people.
Right.
Usually you'll take a call and say, okay, we'll get someone started to you. They'll be to you as soon as they can. At this point, we weren't even sure if the first responders were going to be able to get to the people that were calling in, either because of trees down, water, and we would dispatch the calls, but even on their way to those calls, the firemen would get out with other people who were stranded or get trapped themselves by trees down, power lines down. So we just had to tell people basically to do what they could to keep themselves safe. At that point, we couldn't tell them they're on their way to you because we didn't know.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader next-gen core services, and a big shout-out to subscribers and everyone. As always, thank you all so very much. This has been an amazing week. As I have been mentioning with all the other episodes, I have this partnership with the North Carolina State 911 Board, and we have partnered to do different trainings, record episodes with the amazing 911 professionals of this great state of North Carolina. And I have my next guest today, and her name is Stephanie, and she is the Director of 911 here at Henderson County Sheriff's Office out of North Carolina, and actually brand new, right?
Brand new
coming into it. Welcome back. And for those who are watching and listening, just a kind of brief summary of your public safety experience.
Okay. I've been in public safety for about 18 years. It will be 18 in May.
Mm-hmm.
I'm married to one of our local firemen. He's the one that got me into the world of public safety and emergency services. He kept talking about how great it would be for me to look into that, and I actually got to come in and sit with one of our supervisors and fell in love with it and never looked back. So
it's interesting how when we come in, whether it is outside influence, inside influence, however you want to put it, family member, friend, or whatever, that it gets into your blood really fast. Now, before we get into some of the things that we're going to be talking about for this episode, there's a question for you right there. Like, what do you think it is that public safety, 911, like all of it, just that it gets in your blood so fast and it becomes almost addicting in a way sometimes? Like, what do you think it is? How does that happen, or why does that happen?
Honestly, it's, I think, a few different things. I can remember as a small child watching ambulances go by, wondering where they were going, always wanting to know, what's going on there? So that part has always been intriguing to me, but just the fast pace of it, never having 2 days that are the same, all of that. It was just like a light bulb going off for me. I'm like, that's what I want to do, because doing the same thing over and over, the same job day in and day out, it can get boring. But 911, you just never know what you're going to walk into or what kind of calls you're going to hear. And that was very interesting to me.
I think that's one of the things that a lot of people love about 911 is, just like you said, no day is the same. The incident type might be the same,
Right.
but the situation that goes along with that incident type is never the same.
Very different.
Something different is always happening. And I think that's what I loved about it as well, is that things were always changing. And also to have, that type of camaraderie and everyone around you, the people out in the field, just building those relationships, building that trust. You do end up becoming like, another family, because you're also there with them way more, a lot of times than you are with your own.
Sure. You spend a lot of hours with those people. So they become your second family.
Yes.
And it can be dysfunctional family too. I mean, you have your disagreements and things, but then you'll stand up for them in a heartbeat.
Of course.
That's their fan. It's like the little brother. Nobody else can pick on him, but you can pick on him, kind of thing. So
Right. Yes, exactly. It's that taxation type thing. You're the one who's able to do it, but you step to us, we're gonna
give it right back.
Give it right back. You've got this wall and you can't pass it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've had all of these years that you've been in public safety and all, and I'm sure that you have had tons of different calls. Just as we said, everything is different. But recently, something happened that I think a lot of people were not even expecting. And what I'm talking about is Hurricane Helene. And I remember when it was coming up, just even the way it was coming up on the map, the way people were, mapping it out and all, it seemed odd coming up and around, and where it ended up going through, like even myself and some of my family members, because I have family that live in Central Florida. So of course, they're always getting, some sort of hurricane or something that's going on. So we're always like, maybe you should just come over here. They're like, no, we're fine. We've gone through it before. It's okay. And, whatever happens, happens. But I think with the way it was going, I don't think a lot of people expected it to be or happen the way it happened. Now, for you yourself, going into all of this, I mean, how much were all of you guys watching the trajectory as well of Helene coming up?
So we had TVs on the Weather Channel constantly, and we were in close communication with our emergency management team and our emergency manager for Henderson County. We were going back and forth, and I'm with you. I don't think anybody could have predicted how bad it was actually going to be. We had never had anything like that in my lifetime, and I hope to goodness we never have to go through it again, just to be honest. But like you were saying, Florida, not to take anything away from them, but they are prepared for storms like that. They are used to things like that.
Right.
Here in the mountains, we don't get things like that. We get, the occasional snowstorm or some wind here and there, maybe some rain, but never the amount of flooding that we had in that short time period too. I mean, I think that's part of what happened was we didn't have time to properly prepare for what hit us, just because it did happen so fast. A lot of people didn't have the time to get out and get prepared for it.
Yeah, I think, and this isn't to the scale of what we're about to talk about here, but I understand what you mean by the preparation. And just for example, earlier this week, I was over at New Hanover County, and I was talking to some of them out there. But what we were talking about was one person had mentioned the dusting of snow that landed, and they said that was our blizzard. And I thought they were joking at first, and then they were kind of like, well, how many cars did you see on the road when you're coming over here in that area? And I said, oh, you were serious? I was like, yeah, there was nobody around really. There wasn't a lot it was just kind of like me driving. And they said, yeah, because everything is like, it gets shut down, and it's the same thing where, I remember visiting growing up, I was a teenager, we would always go to Texas, and they actually ended up having kind of like an ice storm. And we're watching the news, and there's cars like sliding everywhere. And we wanted to go to the mall, and my cousins are like, "No, you're not going to go out." Like, why not? Like, well, we don't have what you guys have. We don't have snow trucks. We don't have plows. We don't have anybody out there putting salt down. You guys are going to slip and slide everywhere. So, I mean, we still drove because we knew how to drive through it, and it ended up being fine. But in the same sense of not really having the preparation, or because you don't really expect a lot of that stuff, or it doesn't happen often, you're not prepared. So
Sure.
again, like I said, it's not the same scale, but I just mean in the same sense of the preparation, or having other things to be able to deal with certain things like that. Now, the way you mention it, you guys don't get a lot of that around here, and things just happened. Really, I mean, how fast was it escalating as you were here? I mean, even in the center.
So I got to work on Thursday morning, and had already made plans to stay Thursday night because I knew it was probably going to be pretty bad. My children, I had made the arrangements for them to be at my mom's house, so they were taken care of. My husband was working, of course, with the fire department. So I stayed Thursday night, and then going into Friday morning, we had a lot of rain Thursday evening prior to the actual storm hitting us, which I think is what a lot of people didn't expect to happen. So we had a ton of rain Thursday evening, and then it just kept coming on Friday, and then the winds hit. And I've heard, I don't know how true it is, but I've heard the palm trees in Florida tend to bend with the wind.
Mhm.
We don't have that with the trees here. They snapped like toothpicks all over the county. Roads were just blocked everywhere you tried to go, either power lines down, trees down, water across the roadway. So, I mean, even though you may have 3 or 4 different routes to try to get to your home, all 3 or 4 of those routes may have been blocked depending on where you were going in the county and what time of day. So I knew it was better to go ahead and plan to stay the night. So then Friday morning, I went down into the center, and I would say it hit about 4:30, 5 o'clock is when we started getting some of our first calls in. And then, of course, as the sun came up and people started to get up for work and things, that's when it really hit. And it didn't stop after that for a few days after that. I always say, it rings nonstop, but it truly, our phones rang nonstop. And we had, all of our consoles were full. We had people in the floor trying to help us dispatch off of portable radios. We were doing everything we could to try to keep up, but it was just even more than we could handle. On any given day, we usually average about 300 to 500 calls, depending. We hit almost 1,000 calls just in a short time period on that Friday.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine that. Like, I'm with a lot of the folks that I've met here that are in your center. And you're telling me this, I'm imagining all of them at their consoles or on the floor, like working and doing all of these different things. Was there, it's hard for me to fathom this because it's obviously something that I've never dealt with before. Like, of course, I've dealt with, we had, a tornado that came through, and I mean, it wasn't a big one, but I think it was a 0. So in my area, like, it wasn't anything huge, and obviously not in comparison with this, but all I'm saying is that, having to set off the sirens and having trees and having wires down and everything else, and thinking about that type of hell that we were going through now is 1,000 times more with your situation. So I remember how I felt during that time, but for you, I can only imagine that feeling of helplessness. How was that for you? If you can kind of take me through some of those feelings.
It was pretty awful, actually, because as a 911 dispatcher, your job is to help people.
Right.
Usually you'll take a call and say, okay, we'll get someone started to you. They'll be to you as soon as they can. At this point, we weren't even sure if the first responders were going to be able to get to the people that were calling in, either because of trees down, water, and we would dispatch the calls, but even on their way to those calls, the firemen would get out with other people who were stranded or get trapped themselves by trees down, power lines down. So we just had to tell people basically to do what they could to keep themselves safe. At that point, we couldn't tell them they're on their way to, because we didn't know that. When you've got 1,000 calls that you're trying to scroll through on the CAD, it's very overwhelming. And we live in a community where we have a pretty good relationship with our fire departments and first responders, law enforcement. And sometimes they have to call in and ask questions about the calls and stuff. We couldn't even scroll through the calls because there were so many of them. If they needed any additional information about the call, it was just more than we could do to even scroll through at that time, because we had our CAD screen, what I'm talking about, but we had our CAD screen stretched as far as we could and still had to scroll through just to be able to see what was going on. And it wasn't even specific to one area. It was countywide. I mean, everywhere was just getting hit. Of course, we did have our harder hit areas once it was all said and done. But at that particular time of day, when it first hit, it was countywide.
So before I ask you this next question, I want to mention that. So yesterday in class, it's just popped into my head now I'm pretty sure it was during the Imagine Listening session when we were recording in there. Excuse me. Someone had mentioned that there were people that had been calling in, and they had to call them back. And they never thought that they would have to call someone back to say, we're not sending help, or that we can't send help out, because there's not enough people, or I don't know, because they're unable to get to them or whatever. And I can't imagine that feeling of having to call someone, because the whole job, right, the whole profession is to help, right? Mm-hmm. But then when you have that moment where you actually have to call someone and say, there's no one that we can send, I can't even imagine that feeling. So with that said, and if you feel comfortable, of course, what were some of the calls or types of calls that you guys were receiving here during that time when everything was just really going to hell? I mean, it's basically like a nightmare situation.
It was. So for every 911 call I take, I usually can vision what's happening. Mm-hmm. One of the majority of the calls we took were people that either water was coming into their vehicles or their house, and they would call us back, and it's up to my waist, it's up to my chest. What do I do? And it was just a gut-wrenching feeling, because you didn't know at that point if people, like you said, could get to them. And just picturing someone standing there in chest deep water, not being able to go anywhere and stuck. I mean, it's very gut-wrenching. You feel helpless. There's nothing you can do at that point to help them, and that. And that was a hard point to reach. Like we've talked about, I've been in this almost 18 years, and never in my life did I think I would get to a point that said, I can't do this. But there was a couple times I reached that during the storm. I said, I can't do this. I can't tell people we can't help them, because it was very hard.
I can only imagine that the amount of people that well, let me ask this first. So in your center, how many people do you have working at a time normally?
Normally there are 4 people to a shift, and then we do have a daytime dispatcher that helps us, and our communications operation supervisors there. So 4 to 6 usually if everybody's there.
So 4 to 6 usually if everybody's there. And then while this is going on, how many people are in there now?
We had all 12 stations full, and then I know of at least 2 or 3 that were sitting in the floor using the portable radios and stuff. So at any given point, 13 to 15 people trying to cover a county, the size of Henderson County, which in my opinion is an average size. It's not huge, but it's not small.
Right.
We do fine normally with 4 to 6 people, and then having to go up to 13 and it still not be enough was very eye-opening for me.
So with what you just mentioned, if you could, to continue to kind of, I guess, really paint the picture for those who are watching or listening. I mean, what kind of chaos are you seeing when you're in there? And what I mean by this is, of course, like you said, you've got people sitting on the floor doing things. So you can vision that, people that are sitting there, you've got every console that is full, are you hearing like all different kinds of things and everyone else and their conversations? Maybe even so, having a moment to just kind of look at people, your coworkers, your folks, the looks on their faces, the sound of their voice, like, again, something I can't even imagine, but what kind of chaos is going on?
So, I mean, it was a lot. Like you said, the phones did not stop. That's all you heard was phones ringing. I mean, I think I went to sleep the next week hearing phones ringing just because that's what we heard for so long during that time. And of course, we have different tones for, our 911 ringtone is a little different than our admin lines, but I mean, it was just both of them were going as much as possible while we still had phones. That's the other piece of it during all of this. After the brunt of the storm, we lost phones and radios at one point. So it went from all of those noises to almost dead silence. And that was a very, very eerie feeling because there's still a whole community out there that needs help that may not be able to reach you. So that also was a very gut-wrenching feeling, knowing that there were so many people out there who still might need help. But as far as within the center, you could tell, like you said, the looks on their faces, we were all holding it together by a thread. And we tried to take breaks to kind of reset, but I think at most we got 30-minute naps here and there just to reset ourselves. And after, 50-something hours, 53, 56 hours of going nonstop, I mean, you're running on fumes at that point. And so we were all running on fumes and holding it together by a thread. And you could tell by the looks on their faces. And it was one of those things, I think it truly brought our center together more than we ever had been. But we were also afraid to hug someone because we knew they would crack if we,
Right.
hugged them. They were doing
exactly.
so good to hold it together. We didn't want to be the reason that they broke. But eventually everybody, I think, had their moment of breaking. And so it was really interesting to me to see how each of us, came together and we all were there for each other. And some new friendships were formed from this, I think. And our center really came together and worked well together and kind of had each other's backs. And we actually came up with a system after we realized this wasn't going to slow down anytime soon. So we kind of started partnering up with each other. So I would tag my partner and say, hey, I need a break. Can you cover, while I'm gone? And she would cover for me. And then I would come back and then she would go on break. And so we did that. We partnered each of us up with someone else so that if you needed a break, you could say, hey, I'm done. I need to go lay down for just a few minutes if you can cover for me. And so that worked out really well to be able to know you had relief in sight. And then they eventually were able to get some other agencies in there to help us.
That is amazing that you were able to find some comfort through that chaos, because I can't even imagine being here, working, thinking about your family who's out there, who's dealing with the storm in their own way, but you have to be here. And at that, I can't even imagine that feeling, because I mean, you're caring and doing everything you can for everyone else while holding it together for yourself, but then also probably in the back of your mind, just kind of praying like, please let my family be okay. Please let, friends or whatever, just be okay.
Absolutely.
And
that was a whole nother piece of it that I didn't mention, with my children being with my family at my mom's house. After we lost phones, I had no way of contacting them to know that they were okay. Luckily, my mom lives up on a hill. And so I kind of thought they might be okay, but I didn't know about their trees because they do have a couple of trees and stuff in their neighborhood. So I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know if they had any structural damage. I was able to hear my husband some on the radio, so I knew he was okay. And that was a relief to hear his voice on the radio, but I still had no connection with him, no communication whatsoever. So to hear him, it was a relief. And after it was over, I found out that he actually was in a fire truck in a church parking lot during the brunt of the storm. I'm glad I didn't know that going into it, but during all that time, he actually got trapped while he was on a way to another call, and they had to go into a church parking lot that was pretty open, and thank goodness no trees were around. So that's where he rode out the storm. And so, yeah, knowing that it was pretty scary. I'm glad I did not know that at the time.
Right.
Because like you said, we had to keep trucking on knowing that we couldn't reach our families. We had a job to do, and we had to make sure that the citizens of Henderson County were taken care of as best as possible, as much as we could, and
Right.
then, keep trucking along.
Now, the brunt of that storm that you mentioned, how long did it actually last? And I'm not talking about the aftermath, because obviously it's actually still kind of going on, right? A lot of the rebuilding and everything else, but during that time when the storm is actually going through, like as you said, like the brunt of the storm, how long did that actually last,
Um,
or just kind of a ballpark?
yeah. So the busier part started, like I said, really early Friday morning, 5:30, something like that. We didn't slow down until it was well into the next week, probably Wednesday, Thursday, towards the latter part of that week. So I would say close to a week that we had with, and also trying to clean up some of the calls that we still had
Right.
pending from when it first came in. We had to, eventually make our way to those people, or, try to find out if they were okay. We didn't want to miss anything or anyone. So we left the calls up there until we knew for a fact somebody had either checked on them or called them. So yeah, it was the latter part of that week, I would say Wednesday, Thursday, at least, before we started to feel a little bit of relief as
Right.
far as the storm. And then,
Jeez.
like you said, there's pieces of it still going on now.
So where the center's at, are you guys in a basement, or
We are. Hmm.
are there windows that you can see outside?
There's not.
Oh, that makes it even more scary. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I was saying too is because I can just imagine that you're going through all of this, and let's just say, the power goes out. You're looking out and it's just pitch black, but also you don't hear anything but like the wind or whatever. I mean, that makes it that much more of a scary situation, just that added little bit. But you're in a basement, you don't even know what's going on or can't even see. I mean, right, because of the phone calls and everything, and whichever the weather. But I just mean you can't actually like see anything, and that just it's almost like when you're like the equivalent of when you're taking phone calls, you're just piecing it together in your
Mhm.
head, and sometimes it's worse than what's actually going on. But in this case, you have the hurricane going through, you got all these crazy calls that are coming in, and there are some folks that you're unable to help them. Just again, a nightmare situation. But what I do like is how you said, because I was going to ask this, but you beat me to the punch. We must have been in the same brainwave of what are some of the good things that came out of this whole situation, and you kind of mentioned it already, where it brought you all together.
It did. Like I said, new friendships were formed. But also even outside of the center, just the community, seeing others, helping others, your neighbors, helping neighbors, and the camaraderie between patrol and dispatch. And, they would come in and check on us and say, do you need a drink? Do you need something to eat? So we had people checking in on us, and the sheriff himself would stop by and check on us. So it did bring some goodness out of it. As sad as the situation was, there were a few things that we could take away from it that felt good. And we've always had a pretty close center, but now I feel like that closeness is even a lot more since the storm.
Amazing. Thank you so very much for being on, for sharing this story. That what you went through, what everyone else went through, the center and community as a whole. And I just thank you for everything that you guys do. And I, again, just can't even imagine all of it, but I'm glad that there was some good that came out of this as well. For as we go into the wrap up of this episode, for those who are watching and listening, for anyone who might end up enduring a situation like this, or any situation that could be, I don't know, just chaos in the center, like what is some advice or some words that you have for anyone who's watching and listening, on everything that you guys dealt with here? I guess as into, I don't know, maybe preparation or anything like that.
The most important part, obviously, take care of yourself. If you need to reset, if you have a chance, take it, reset. Like I said, even if it was 30 minutes and we got the chance to walk away just to give your brain a little bit of a break, because I'm a firm believer everybody has a cup and it will run over eventually. So you kind of need to know where that gauge is for yourself and be able to know where you're at on your cup. And once it's overflowing, it's not good for you if you let it get to that point. So take a break, reset, come back in, because you're truly not helpful to your coworkers, to the community, or anything like that if you can't take care of yourself too. Obviously, in that situation, it's a little different because we had people that couldn't get to work and people that were here couldn't go home. So It was a little different. So we did the best we could do, but mainly is to take care of yourself, but also try to prepare the best you can, call in extra personnel, make arrangements to stay the night if you have to, because like I said, there were some people that couldn't even get to work. So just having an overnight bag ready in case you are faced with a situation like that, you'll have the things that you may need on hand, extra clothes, things that make you feel better. If you sit in the same clothes for days on end, you're not going to feel good. So it's helpful to have bags in your car to be prepared for anything, really.
Perfect. Thank you so very much for everything, for being on, for sharing your experience with Hurricane Helene and everything, and just being here yesterday and today has just been amazing. Your folks are the coolest. Your sheriff is awesome. And you are awesome as well. So thank you for everything and the hospitality. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you.
It was an awesome time.
Good.
So for everyone who's watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and it's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. But to find everything, you can simply go to links, and that's links with 2eyes.co/WTT podcast, and you'll find everything there. This episode has been sponsored by In Digital, a leader next gen core services. Big shout out to subscribers and the North Carolina State 911 Board. Thank you for everything. I appreciate it. This has been an awesome opportunity. And I love that we continue to partner and share these powerful stories from this great state of North Carolina. You can see this on Facebook, YouTube, as well as X and LinkedIn. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone. And we will see you all in the next one.
Imagine listening to someone's worst day every single day. Imagine listening as someone experiences life, through their worst nightmare to the miracle of birth or a life saved. I'm Ricardo Martinez, a former 911 dispatcher, and for years, I've been recording the voices of a hidden world, ours. I've provided a space for 911 dispatchers to share their powerful stories. It started as a peer support session and continues. Dispatchers sitting together, sharing out loud, or writing down what they couldn't say. Some stories will grip you. Stories of heartbreak, resilience, and calls that haunt us long after the line goes quiet. But imagine listening is more than heavy emotion. It's about healing. It's about laughing through the chaos, lifting each other up, and reminding the world that dispatchers are human too. The lighthearted will balance the heavy. Experience the power of storytelling, a podcast for the thin gold line and those who want to understand it. This is Imagine Listening. Your worst day is our everyday. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.